Hey Memory Masters, it's me, Andrea Lee Zakel-Farrow, the Missus of Memory, again, and I'm here to talk about education in Ontario because I have a beef with Doug Ford, the Premier of Ontario, about the way education runs in Ontario. See, I love history and politics, and when I was a teenager in 1997, when the historic teachers' strike happened with then Premier Mike Harris and Education Minister John Snowballin, who everybody called Snowball. That was fun. The teachers made that one up in 1997. That's how I remember the name John Snowball, because everybody wanted to throw a snowball at him in March when the strike was on and there was snow on the ground. It was hilarious, and I didn't even know that was a memory technique back then as a kid. Anyway, those are the players. And what happened basically in the 1997 Common Sense Revolution that Mike Harris did politically was basically he took all the individual school boards who had individual powers over their schools and boards and such and streamlined it centrally into the hands of the Premier of Ontario so that everybody could have equal standards. Now, theoretically, it seemed good enough. You know, we were in an age where we were removing asbestos from older schools. It happened at my school even. So there was things that needed to be done, and we needed to cut costs, and the baby boom echo of kids was fewer than the baby boom, so there were schools that did not have that were not filled. There were things that I understand needed to be done in a governmental financial sense. But what he did when he streamlined these powers, Mike Harris, in 1997 into the hands of the Premier, those powers are all still in the hands of the Premier Doug Ford right now. So fast forward to fall of 2022, when in Ontario we had education workers striking over very poor standards in their jobs and pay that dated to like 20 or 30 years ago. You can look up the statistics online directly if you want to. It's Ontario, Canada, education workers strike in 2022. Anyway, I support the workers because in a time before everything was centralized to the hands of the Premier, individual school boards could just have a little bit more direct control over the schools that were under their board, and things like discrepancies between city schools and country rural schools that isn't addressed in the current governmental policy. Rural schools were able to do rural things in a better way for themselves. There wasn't a need for urban schools, but then this urban centralization just rolled on through, and us country folk were like, why the heck are those people in the city telling us how to do a bus run over here when you can't turn around on that gravel road? Like little things like that trickle down from an urban-centric policy where rural and or northern schools in Ontario were like, what the heck, this doesn't work. Little things like that, okay? Now, so I have beef, and I could go on and on and on forever. But what I did on Facebook, on my own personal feed last month, you can find me, Andrea Lee Zakel-Farrow. I wear the cheeky hat. What I did was I went on a Wikipedia dive about all of the previous education ministers in charge of the Ministry of Ontario since it was started, since it was founded by I said his mnemonic name, Egerton Ryerson. I call him Egghead Ryerson because, well, look up Egerton Ryerson and residential schools. Egghead Ryerson. And then I think of Humpty Dumpty falling off of a wall, and then the image just sticks in my head that he founded the whole ministry. But what I learned about the ministry and the 40 subsequent ministers, up until the current one, Minister Lecce, is that of all those 40 ministers, only a handful had actual training working in educational settings like schools for real or with educational backing. And all the rest were just mostly men in the past, mostly women more recently. And they were like journalists and lawyers and politicos. When I looked at the screen in their credentials for managing an education portfolio, it was as if I was looking at some Doug Ford adaptation of Game of Thrones where it's game of cabinets, and he's just trading the cabinets around to whoever wants to do that one at the time, and whoever he favors goes to there or there. Now, these are my opinions, but shouldn't there be somebody with educational knowledge or training at least advising to the Minister of Education? I challenge Doug Ford and Stephen Lecce to spend 1 week teaching in a kindergarten classroom. I chose high school because I didn't want to tie shoelaces. I challenge you, either one of you, to go be a French teacher in a grade 7 or grade 8 or grade 9 applied French class where the kids don't want to be there and you're a substitute. And you might not even know the French you're substituting for, depending on the availability of substitute teachers to cover the classes. I challenge Doug Ford and Stephen Lecce to reframe how they think about ministers of education. And please, I ask, think about having somebody with educational credentials managing that portfolio. Until you do that, I challenge you also to go spend 1 week teaching a class. This is just my beef as Mrs. Memory. And in the next video, I'm going to share with you a recall of those 40 ministers that I memorized because I just wanted to do it with the power of the mind. Check out the next video where I recall all 40 ministers, and maybe I'll go into the mnemonic names so you can see the goofy in my head. I don't know. We'll see. Tell me what you think and watch that next video. Till next time, Memory Masters.